I'm just the goofy guy that saw a photograph in the store and grabbed it and kept on doing it. And next thing you know, 20 years later, I have 400 or 500 photographs. Think of the early 1900s, when photography was so rare, especially when you see a photograph of gay men. A lot of times, what they really were photographs where the photographer would come to town. You might have had one photograph of yourself for, an entire 50 years of your life or something like that. It means something just to see a little part of their life back then when you see these two men together who are holding hands or their legs are crossed or in a goofy pose. There is something special about that type of pose to me, and that's why I would collect these images. So I started collecting the photos in this collection, I would say sometime in the 1980s. Many times I'd go into these antique stores and they would have these bins full of just tintypes and daguerreos and embryos. Think about it as a photograph that's about 2 inches by about 3 inches on a piece of tin. What I would do is sometimes just go through these bins and literally walk through them and find interesting photographs. And eventually I found these photographs of 2 men together that were in a friendly pose, an affectionate pose. And you're like, oh, that's kind of cool, so you collect it. I was really attracted to photographs where men would hold hands or they'd have their arms around each other. And to be quite frank, sometimes you see photographs where some guy's knee is in the other guy's groin. Not overt sexuality, but it's just something a little bit interesting. And that would really attract me, that it tells you something about their relationship, about the fact that they wanted to preserve whatever it was they were trying to pose and get on the camera. Unfortunately, I didn't really preserve them. It sounds kind of bizarre, but I would collect the image and then I put them in a suitcase, and I took that suitcase and I literally put it on the shelf of my closet. It laid there for about 20 years, and I always felt guilty about it. And I remember going to the closet for the first time in literally 20 years and taking them off the shelf, and you realize how good they make you feel when you look at an image, each individually, and you know that behind them are 2 people that have a little bit of a story. And a gentleman named Ed Cheatham, who is head of a department at Ringling, was fascinated by it, and he mentioned, hey, maybe this would be interesting for Ringling.
We have a very special guest with us today, Peter Enrico, who is collector of the Tintype Nothing New exhibition.
Thank you for doing the exhibit. You got to remember, when you look at those tintypes, when you touch that tintype, remember the person in that photograph, almost near 100% guaranteed, has touched that same tintype. These people existed, and they got those images, and they probably held them, and oh, look at it, we look pretty funny, all that kind of stuff. And so there is a bit of historical significance to this.
So Peter, we'll go downstairs and take a look at the installation in progress.
Oh, wow. Oh yeah, look at that. Beautiful. I love it. It makes me happy to know that they're out of my closet and out of my suitcase and on Ringling's property right now, being handled, being curated, and being preserved. If something was to happen to this collection, some level of gay history would be lost, and that would have made me feel horrible. It's really amazing. I just never really saw them like this before. Again, I would collect them and just throw them in a box, and I would never really look at them as one entity. I always say that the hallmark of my collection is 2 individual tintypes that individually they're not very special. These 2 images were collected years apart. I mean, I don't even know where I got them, but what's interesting about those 2 photographs is that it is the same couple, but one photograph, they're much younger than the other photograph. These 2 men that are holding hands, clearly touching their feet together, and it's the 2 same men over a period of years. And that really holds significance for me. I mean, it really does. The fact that Ringling took on these images and are willing to curate them, I can't even begin to tell you what that makes me feel. You can look at each photograph and it has a story behind it. And the story is something you can discover for yourself.